friends with your children? Well, I think first of all, it kind of depends on how old your kids are. Like, if you're going to be mates with your kids, then it's probably something that's better reserved for when they're slightly older. But, you know, as you know, I've got two young girls. And so should you be friends with them? Instinctively, I feel that the answer is no. But also something that I don't want to rule out, if that makes sense. Now, if I just explain psychologically why I feel like I do want to be friends with my kids, I think it's partly set in the fact that obviously part of my story is that I've had to fight for my children. I've had to go to court to essentially end up with 50-50 now, which is great. But, you know, it was a very emotionally, financially, and timely costly. It was very costly in all of those aspects, right? So by the time I kind of landed with the order, which the childcare order, which obviously protects my time with the children, you know, my position really was trying to be their friend. Now, obviously, I'm conscious that I'm always going to be their dad and I've always been their father, but in terms of emotionally where I was at and where I felt they were at, I was really trying to be their friend. And whilst there was part of that which was great, and I would argue that me and my children do have a friendship, having said that, it was like it became something that wasn't necessarily a healthy position for me, and something I don't think was necessarily healthy for them. They were getting a friend from me as opposed to a dad when those two roles would conflict. And what I mean by that is, you know, I was becoming a bit of a yes man, right? I was becoming a bit of the fun guy. And I think as dads, sometimes we do default to that. And I have noticed as well that there are lots of single mothers who will argue that their ex-partner, you know, the child's father, often has this seen as he's always fun. You know, the kids go to him and they always have fun, and they come back to me and they, you know, it's not always like that. And there is a reality to that, particularly if it's not 50-50. If the reality of your shared care with the father is that he has them, you know, just every other weekend, then there is a reality to the fact that the child may come back and feel like it was just amazing. And there's a truth to that, because again, in my position, it was a case of, right, I need to do absolutely everything I possibly can to emotionally appeal to these children. Like, I want them to want to be around me. You know, there's nothing worse than as a father to spend the first moments of your time with your child essentially readjusting to being with your child. Like, I remember this so clearly, like picking up my girls from nursery, and it was almost like me having to initially deal with the disappointment that they didn't want me. You know, they wanted mummy to pick them up. And here I am, my time, you know, the little time I had at that point in time, and they're like, oh, where's mummy? You know, and then a little bit noticeably sad and a little bit confused. They're still going through the confusion as to why mummy and daddy aren't together and why they can't see mummy now. And admittedly, they've missed daddy, but you know, mummy's mummy. And so dealing with all of that was really difficult. Also, I felt really displaced because I didn't have a home to take them back to. You know, my ex-partner was living in our shared home at the time, the family home at the time, with the children. And obviously, when I was seeing them, they weren't at home. And so I was also making efforts to, you know, take them out for dinner because I didn't have a kitchen. I couldn't just cook for them. Thank God, you know, my parents had a space for us, and so I was able to do it. But even that took a while to feel like it was home. And as I said initially, they weren't living with me 50-50. So this idea that you had to be, excuse me, that you had to be fun and always on top of energy and always, you know, a really heightened emotional experience was true for me. It was something that I was really trying to put on for the children so they felt more emotionally inclined to stay. And obviously where this became a bit of a problem was where the reality of our 50-50 started to settle in, and they started to spend more time with me. But then, you know, obviously my budget and my ability to always be the fun guy, it starts to dissipate because you're now living with me. You know, it's not just an hour or two here and I'm going to take you out for dinner. It's like, well, we're going to go home for dinner, and, you know, we're not going out. We're going to stay in, and maybe we won't go to the park, or maybe we will. But the yes man kind of had to stop a little bit. And so, again, because of their ages, it's like I have to kind of be like, there's an element of my mind which is constantly in duplicity, in that I have to be conscious that I'm their dad today, right? And I will always be their father. And so I have to be the role model. I have to be the yes man, the no man. I have to be absolutely everything to them. And so that means sometimes the reality of my life is, no, we can't afford everything, you know? And unfortunately, as much as I want to spoil you with everything possible, if I buy this, it means we forego that. We cannot have that. And so it's become like, how do you deal with that when this is the reality that most parents face? And so, yeah, I've had to come to terms with, I want to preserve a future relationship with my children where we are friends. Where, I mean, I'll always be their dad, as I keep saying, but I want to have the preservation of a relationship, or I want to keep in mind the preservation of our future relationship. So, you know, these are two young girls right now. They'll be two young women, and they'll always be my babies. But, you know, I'm their father, and there's things that they would naturally feel more likely to share with me, things that they probably would feel naturally more likely to share with their mother. But what I definitely want to retain is like open communication, you know, looking each other in the eye, like actual intimacy and love and, you know, accountability. And that comes through discipline. Really and truly, a lot of the safety that the girls experience with me now is the fact that I am also their disciplinarian. Now, what I never do, you know, I'm not talking about hitting my children. I never smack my children. And that's, you know, different parents have different methods of dealing with behavior. But I don't smack my girls. I've got daughters, and I don't think it appropriate for them to see me as someone that disciplines them with physical power. So, you know, I have my methods. I can lower my voice, and I can raise my voice, and, you know, I can stern my face and things like that. And so disciplining them is really, really important because it lets them know that they're safe. And what I mean by that is, like, obviously when I tell them off, when I say no, when I try to give them what I consider to be discipline, it's often for their safety. You know, listening to me is me trying to get them to stay safe. They're young. There's things that are out there that are dangerous. And if they don't pay attention to when I've said no to something, then it's only a matter of time before they feel they can just run in the road. You know what I mean? A passing car, and they're just not listening to daddy. Do you know what I mean? So me making sure my children are disciplined and listening and growing and developing correctly means that I can't always be their friend. I've got to be their father. I've got a responsibility to raise two, you know, conscious, wise, loving, generous women, right? And I'm trying to do that, and it will happen as they grow. It's happening today, and it will happen tomorrow. But in order to do that, the conflict of relationship, friendship, fatherhood has to overrule every single time. And if that means making a decision that goes against being their friend, you know, can we have this? Can we play with this person? Can we go here? No. You know, if that's the bottom line, then that's the bottom line, right? But and that will happen. It happens constantly. Friendship versus fatherhood. I think the key is to make a decision that still reflects a friendship in the future as their father today. You know, so there's things, you know, my girls joke about boyfriends, and I'm like, I'm not having it. Like, I'm really not having it. But equally, it's something that I don't want to shut down in terms of them being able to talk to me about it. Because, you know, if they grow up feeling like they actually can't talk to their dad about boys, what kind of problems does that lead to? Do you know what I mean? And so there's a discipline and there's a fatherhood to it. You're too young. It's not happening right now. Get it out your mind. Stop talking about it. And then there's a reality of we'll share a giggle. Yeah, but not till you're 25. Do you know what I mean? And we have this kind of back and forth about it. And I think that is the balance of fatherhood versus friendship. One of the things that I have always tried to do with them is just promote honesty, and even in difficulty. So, for example, one of the things that I'm constantly telling them is that it's not about, they've done something, they don't want to be honest about it, right? Now, my issue with them, my disciplining of them now comes down to the fact that they haven't been honest about what they've done. Difficult things that you've done wrong to share, I admit, I understand that. I've been a child myself, obviously. But what I'm trying to do is keep a dialogue where you can bring the hard things to me. I'm always for you. Like, I might have to discipline you, but I'm going to be for you. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not going to... it's not out of anger that I will discipline you. And I think, again, that's a very important thing as well, particularly as a father, that although they can upset you and they can at times make you angry, I think when it comes to actually your disciplining of your children, you have to remove that anger element, right? So what that could practically mean as a dad is you will be punished, but not right now. Yeah? Whatever that means. It means like... go to your room. There's times where I've just got to send them away because it's sensible to do that. Just leave my space, go to your room, go to the naughty step, whatever they are, and I will deal with how to deal with you in a calmer state than just lashing out through how I feel, And I think that's really important, particularly as a father. And I think when you father girls as well, the important thing is that we know somewhat through society that women do tend to look for qualities in their partners that their dad had, right? And so, for trying to future-proof their partners as best I can, it's like there's a part of this where, I want you to know that you were constantly loved. The man that you lived with didn't shout at you. The man that you live with didn't raise his hand to you. The man that you live with, they live with their dad. They know I'm a man, and there's I'm a man, and I've got my manly habits about me. But it's about doing that in a safe space where they can look for these qualities in a safe, good, loving partner that they will go on to be with. And I think, again, the best, I can't predict who that will be. And believe you me, by the time they meet anyone, they're going to have a problem. Let's just put it that way, right? But again, if we look at the qualities that they should be invested in, it should be good ones. And most of that will come from me as their father, the man that they've lived with. I'm modeling what it looks like to live with a man. I'm modeling what it looks like to have a relationship with a man, the temperaments of a man, and so I want those to be as healthy for them as possible. I'm not perfect, right? Let's get that straight. I'm not perfect, but no one is. What it's about is being the best example of masculinity to them that I can possibly be. And I'm saying that is not always done through friendship. So fatherhood versus friendship, it's a tough one. I want to feel like they're my friend. We have fun, we laugh, we enjoy each other's company. That's where I feel like we're friends, but also that's part of my fatherhood to them as well. Fatherhood isn't just disciplining them, and it's also having fun with them and enjoying them and them enjoying me as their father. But there is an element of friendship that kind of overlaps with that. Do you know what I mean? And I think when we discuss friendship broadly speaking, it just means, how far you're prepared to go for someone outside of your comfort zone, outside of comfortable. That's what it means to have a friendship. They say that friendship is rarely valued if it doesn't cost you anything. And so I would also parallel that to parenthood and being a father as well. So for any dads out there who are just trying to navigate this road between fatherhood and friendship, don't feel like you have to separate the two. But when they conflict, go with fatherhood, but keep the future thinking self on a friendship that you would like to establish with them. And I think that's one of the best, most practical ways that you can kind of navigate this thing called parenthood. So yeah.